Hello everyone, it's me again. Welcome back to the Soul Crushing Experience. For those who don't know, this is a series I do where I go through my day-by-day progress on a soul-crushing tower and go over my experience, enjoyment, and other things. This time, we head to the bottom of the Great Inferno to look at one of the many soul-crushing towers Ring 9 has to offer. That tower is Tower of Bent Trauma, a tower that is quite literally bent and rather short. But without further ado, let's begin. Day 1 began with an all-jump run after playing some TOCM in Zone 2. I wanted to get right to TOBT instead of TOCM, since the tower was really bad and I did not find it fun. Also, for the first few days, the chat is in a really bad spot on the stream, so I apologize for that, and I do fix it after a bit. For the all-jumps run, my goal was to find the floors I found difficult, and also to practice the final stretch a bit. I immediately noticed that I struggled a lot with floor 3. I made a mental note of the floor, so I know to practice it a lot more when I begin practicing floor 3. Next, I noticed the outside part of floor 6 was scary, and had some quite far jumps, so I was going to have to practice that later on as well. After this, I ended up finishing all of the jumps, and began practicing the final stretch. To my surprise, it took me just 5 minutes to get my first run from the beginning of the final stretch to the win pad. And then I ended my session after that. Today's goal was to finish practicing all the inside floors. For some reason, I decided that I was going to practice floor 1 first and make my way up. Usually I start at floor 10 and make my way down. Floor 1 and 2 were barely any trouble, and then I got to floor 3. Just as I figured, floor 3 was causing me some issues. Mainly 3 things. This jump around a wall to catch a ladder, this weird jump that I do in first person, and the wheel. After a good few minutes of struggling, I eventually did 3 in one run. Next up was to practice floor 4. It only took me about a minute to do the 4th floor. There was nothing to point out as a difficult jump either, as most of it was not too difficult for me. Next up was floor 5. Although 5 had some pretty weird wedges, it only took me a couple minutes to do, so another floor that I wasn't too worried about. Then, I was on to practicing 6. The outside section had me a bit worried, as it had some really far jumps that if I failed, I fell all the way to the bottom. It didn't cause me too much of an issue though. Then I was on to 7. I immediately had an issue on 7, since I was confused on a truss that kept dropping me. Turns out I just didn't have to climb it very high, and then I would get my jump off. After that, I was on to floor 8, which gave me barely any trouble at all. So with that, it was on to 9. I ended up doing 9 on my first try, so I was feeling pretty confident, since that meant I did 8 and 9 in a single run. Now it was time to practice 10. I didn't do it in the same run, but the run after that, so I wasn't really worried about 10. Then I practiced the final stretch again. I actually did it in one go, giving me 10 to the win pad as well. So, to my surprise, I felt ready to begin playing from the beginning. This session went about how I would expect. A ton of failing the first 3 floors. This happened for about half an hour, and then I got my first floor 4 run. This run went better than I expected for sure, since I ended up failing the jump off the wheel. Out of all the jumps in floor 4, this is the one I expected to fail. I got another run to 4 after a bit of failing 3 again. This time I actually made the jump off the wheel, and then I failed one of the head hitters. A really upsetting fail, but it is still more progress than I expected today. Almost immediately after, I got back up to 4 again. This time, I actually got to 5, passing the head hitters. Then it was time for 5 outside. It isn't too difficult, but it is quite scary. I managed to pass it somehow, which was really shocking to me. Unfortunately, however, I failed pretty early on in the 6 outside section. It wasn't one of the jumps I expected to fail either. But again, this is way farther than I thought I was going to get today. A bit after this, I got back up to the 5 outside section and accidentally walked off a far jump. After this, I ended my stream and finally fixed the chat issue. Today started with a bit more consistency, with me getting to 3 almost immediately twice, and the second time getting to not just 4, but also 5. And then, I got to 6 again. I've only been playing the tower for 10 minutes at this point. I ended up passing my PB and entered the hard part of the floor 6 outside. Somehow, I got to 7.
I failed the same
7.
damn jump! That jump's not possible. You're hacking.
No! I got a leg spike at the stupid fucking wedge wrap. This was literally the first session I had on Tower of Bent Trauma today. Not too long after, I got back up to 5 again, just after 2 floor 3 fails. The consistency for floor 3 has gone up quite a bit. Unfortunately though, I ended up failing pretty early into floor 5 this time. Next attempt was another to 5, and this time I got a little further than the last one, getting to the outside section. I walked off the long jump to the ladder again. And again, right back up to 5 immediately after. This time, the strategy I used on a truss stopped working since I was using downward momentum before. This is where I began to realize 5 was actually the hardest floor for me. This time when I made it back to the truss, I just hit space, and that didn't work either, so I was going to try flicking next. This time when I was trying to jump off the wheel, I tapped too far to the right and walked off it, ending my run there. After that, I decided to practice the jump on 7 that I had failed, and found a new way of doing it that is really consistent for me. After this was some more of floors 1 to 3 failing, then another attempt to 4 that ended to the end of the wheel. Then I got back up and passed the wheel again this time. Back to 5 for another attempt. This time I tried flicking off the truss. It worked, but I just didn't think and tried turning myself instead of just going at a shift lock. I only fell to 4, however, so I managed to get myself back up to 5. Remember that ladder jump I kept walking off of? Well, this time, I didn't grab the ladder. I did get my jump off this time, however. Another 5 attempts later, and this time I actually did walk off. I don't know why I kept walking off of floor 5, but I wasn't even that upset about it anyway. I caught myself back on 4 and failed the jump off the big wheel again. It was starting to set in now, that the jump to 5 and all of 5 was the hardest part of the tower until the final stretch. This time, when I got to the big wheel, I got up to 5. Unfortunately, I was too close to the wall and didn't make the head hitter after that since the roof got closer to me as I got closer to the wall. After this, I started practicing 5 like I should have. Then, I immediately got back up to 5 and made it to the outside section. I got a lag spike on the last jump of 5, however, and fell all the way to the bottom again. A really upsetting fail since it wasn't something I could control. The jump also isn't very hard, so I basically got robbed from a floor 6 attempt. After this, I got a few more attempts to 5, but all of them failed to jumps I've already gone over, and I ended my session after that. Overall, a quite successful day, but I definitely wanted to practice 5 some more now. Before starting my stream, I did some more practicing. I did floor 5 in the final stretch a couple times, just to help with consistency. The day started pretty slow at first, but quickly picked up on my first 4 attempt, since it got to 5. Unfortunately, the run didn't last long at all, when I got stuck on a wedge at the beginning. Then, right after that, I got up to 6 again. It has been a while since I got there, and I ended up failing it after accidentally going the wrong way, and then it fell in the lava. Another 5 fail, and this time it was because I got bounced off trying to get into a wedge jump. After this, I failed a wrap on the 5 outside section because I didn't realize that it actually had wedges instead of being a giant stick-out wrap. Another 4 fails at 5, and then I got back up to 6 again, feeling pretty good about it this run. However, that good feeling didn't last very long when I failed the same jump again, but this time I wrapped in too much. After this, I practiced 6 for a bit, and got back into it right after. After this, I failed 5 a few more times, and had a fail that ended to the second last jump because I barely hit my head. The next 5 attempt, I got back up to 6, this time passing the jump I kept failing. Luckily, I made it up to 7 again. Then, I passed the first jump, meaning I officially had a new PB. I was extremely focused now, since the second half of the tower wasn't too hard until the final stretch. And sure enough, my first 8 attempt. I was feeling a little nervous, but not enough to impact my playing at this point, so I started doing 8 right away. Things were going really well, until I fell on a pretty easy jump onto the end of 7. Then, while trying to get back, I ended up falling all the way to the bottom. After this, a few more 5 fails, and I ended my session there. But for some reason, I decided I would go for another session today. first attempt up to 5, and I ended up getting back to 6. Unfortunately, I turned too much on the ramp to the truss and I fell to the lava. I was honestly shocked that I only failed this jump now and not earlier. It wouldn't be for a good while before I made it back up to 6, but I did make it there. I made it back up to 7 and was hoping for a good run. I didn't get that good run, and I failed near the end of 7, but caught myself on the outside section of 6 and luckily made it right back up. Then, I made it up to 8 this run. I was hoping this would go better than last time since 8 is probably one of the easiest floors in the tower. And so, new PB. Okay. I'm starting to get quite nervous, actually. We're at 9. 9 was a scary floor, since it had some pretty difficult jumps. Definitely the hardest floor of the second half. One of the hardest jumps being the squeeze, which I fell on from turning too quickly. It's quite the difficult jump, and it is over nothing, so my run had ended. But now, I was almost at the final stretch, with just a bit more of 9 left, and floor 10, which is probably the shortest floor in the tower, and also is pretty easy. Not too long after, and I made it back up to 9 again. The consistency was a little insane, honestly. I was ready to take on 9 again since I had practiced the jump I failed last time. I ended up failing the jump before it though, since I had turned too quickly to grab the truss. Same fail on a different jump. After just 6 minutes, I had got myself back up to 9 yet again. This time passing both the truss jumps, meaning I had gotten a new PB yet again. And not too long after, my first 10 attempt. I was fairly confident that I could pass 10 since it was quite easy and get to the final stretch. This didn't happen, however, since I had not turned out far enough to grab the truss, but I was very lucky and caught myself on 9. Although, I would have my second fail to the squeeze truss. After this came a long streak of failing 5 until I eventually got myself back up to 6 and then 7. However, I came a bit short on a far jump to a truss, catching myself on 6. I had got myself back up to 7 luckily though, and was ready to try again. The run ended with a really sad fail, as I was just barely too far to the right to grab a truss, and fell all the way to the bottom. Then ended my session after that. I played Tower of Bent Trauma today for a total of 3.5 hours, and it wasn't even because I wanted the grind to be over. I was having a really good time with this tower, and didn't want to stop playing it. But despite that, I still ended my stream and prepared to play tomorrow. After a long day yesterday, I was ready to play this tower for as long as I needed to. After a bit, I finally got my first run of the day past 5. Where did this run get to this time though? Well, take a guess. Yep, another fail to that jump. Then I went back to practice that jump yet again. After that, back to the bottom to grind some more. I was mentally stronger than ever in this game, and was ready to grind for as long as I needed to. After not too long, right back up to the jump on 9. And yet again, I had failed the jump, this time turning in too late. And then again, I went to practice it, and then started playing again. To me, it wouldn't matter how many times I failed floor 9, as long as I could get there semi-consistently. And so, it only took me a few minutes to get back up to the jump. This time, however, I ended up getting past it. Then, I got to floor 10. I was ready this time. I had practiced 10 before today, and didn't fail it a single time. And that practice showed, as it was finally time. Oh boy! I'm at the final stretch.
I see that.
Fuck!
For 10 yet.
I need to see that.
I'm scared. This was it. The final stretch. The hardest part of the tower, and the most punishing part. It is a rather lengthy section of the tower, with some terrifying jumps over the lava of Ring 9. With the fog finally clearing up and overlooking everything Ring 9 has to offer, I tried keeping my nerves calm and began. Wow, I'm so stupid. Wow. It was an unfortunate fail, but I wasn't too shocked by it. As I said earlier, I expected to fail the final stretch once, so I kept my head high, and went to practice it again to make sure I was more prepared next time. Before we continue though, I wanted to say congratulations to my friend Crimson for completing Tower of Wicked Fortress, since he had completed it during this session. Anyway, I failed a lot to 5, but after about 45 minutes, I finally passed 5 again. This run got past 6, 7, and 8, and eventually got to the jump on 9 again. Passing the jump though, I got back to 10 again for the 3rd time. And then, it was that time again. So I took a quick rest, climbed the ladder again, and began my journey over the lava of Ring 9 for the 2nd time. Passing where I did before, I began to get really nervous, but I was focused. I was not slowing down, and I was not taking any breaks until I reached the wind pad, or I was wet with the lava yet again. And so, I kept going. Eventually, I had reached the final structure. And so, it was time I faced the most infamous jump of Tower of Bent Trauma, the final jump. Let's go! Oh my god!
Oh.
Let's go!
G.
I beat it!
GG's, bro.
Double one of those shots.
Oh, let's fucking go! I have to say this immediately. I really enjoyed this tower. This was for sure my favorite Insane so far. The gameplay is a little wacky, but I honestly really enjoyed it, other than floor 5. The floor 5 wedges were quite annoying, but every other floor and the final stretch were really fun. As I mentioned a couple times now, the difficulty mainly comes from the 3rd and 5th floor, as well as the final stretch. Floor 3 got pretty consistent after a while, and with enough practice, so did the final stretch. Floor 5, however, didn't really get that consistent. It wasn't terribly inconsistent, but I didn't see myself getting more consistent at it for the most part. The best part of the tower was without a doubt the music and atmosphere. The way the tower is all foggy with the music, it made for a really cool atmosphere while playing. And I felt like everything was building up to the final stretch, which was one of the coolest feelings I have ever had playing JATO. Just seeing the fog clear away and the super intense song beginning, it really was a unique feeling to this tower. But anyway, it is time to get into the rating. When rating a tower, I rate a tower out of 2 categories: gameplay and enjoyment. We'll start with the gameplay. This is probably the lowest point of the tower. Was the gameplay bad? Absolutely not. It just was the worst part out of everything. My main complaint with the gameplay is just floor 5. I really found this floor just annoying, as the wedges were really stupid sometimes, and you could get yourself caught on them. Also, some of the hardest jumps of 5 were over nothing, so a lot of the time, you would have to completely restart your run. But despite that, I still would give the gameplay an 8 out of 10. Next is the enjoyment. This is for sure my favorite Insane Tower I have played yet, and definitely one of my favorites. But not my favorite though. Not only did I find the tower really fun to grind, but the music helped with it too. As the gameplay got more scary and I got more nervous, the music had helped set that nervous feeling in, but yet was still motivating for me. No matter how many times I failed 5, that one jump on 9, or even the final stretch, I was still having a great time with the tower. And that's why I give the enjoyment of this tower a 9 out of 10. This gives Tower of Ventrama an overall of 17 out of 20, making this one of the best towers I've ever played. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I am really excited to see what you all think, as my Tower of Mindbreaking video did a lot better than I had expected, so I want to thank you all so much for that. I just want to remind everyone that I stream on Twitch and YouTube whenever I am playing JToH. You can find the link to my Twitch in the description, as well as the link to my Discord, to see whenever I upload a video, start streaming, or just to see what I am up to. Speaking of, as of now, I am preparing myself as I plan to complete all of Zone 1. I am done everything up to Remorseless, and I am preparing myself for both Citadel of Peril and my next hardest, Tower of Thinning Layers. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.